Hello everyone, and welcome to our reunion celebrants. Once again, I'm Tom Miles, Dean of the Law School. I hope you had the opportunity to watch my short welcome video. Although I miss being with all of you on campus, I hope that you are enjoying this weekend's many virtual festivities. Today, I'm pleased to provide an update on how the law school continues to provide our wonderful students with an unparalleled legal education, including throughout the uncertainties and challenges of the past year. As you might imagine, the question I'm asked most frequently by our graduates and friends is, how is the law school faring? It's impossible to address the state of the law school in 2021 without acknowledging the tremendous impact of COVID-19 on academic life, our community, and the operations of the law school. Today, I'd like to briefly review the biggest challenges arising from COVID-19 and how we are meeting those challenges. Our community, like every community, face substantial collective and individual challenges. For some members of our community, tragedies have unfortunately touched their families. We are incredibly grateful that the immediate members of our law school community have either avoided illness or recovered quickly. Additionally, we are proud of the response of our community to the challenges of the past year. Our law school community came together in inspiring ways to advance our academic mission, deliver unmatched legal education, prepare our students for exciting careers, and support each other. After moving classes to a remote format on only 2 weeks' notice in spring 2020, the law school began planning for the 2021 academic year in concert with the university. Our most urgent priority was and continues to be the health and safety of the law school community. But as faculty and senior leadership of the law school began to respond to the pandemic, we faced 3 critical issues with shifting for remote teaching, learning, and working. How could we continue to deliver distinctive legal education and excellent teaching? How could we maintain community and culture if we were no longer together on campus? And how could we provide operational continuity to ensure that faculty, students, and staff received seamless and excellent service? The university decided that our scholarly and pedagogical mission was best advanced if we could offer some on-campus instruction, and the challenge was to find ways to accomplish this safely. Over the summer, faculty and administrators at the law school and across the university began a complex and far-reaching planning process to meet this challenge. It involved developing guidelines for mask wearing, updating cleaning protocols, identifying new spaces where teaching could occur in socially distanced ways, and developing the infrastructure and training for teaching in a hybrid format. The university established testing programs, some voluntary, some mandatory, and other monitoring protocols. In a true Chicago way, all our faculty and students could choose a preferred method of teaching and attending classes, either virtually or here on campus. As a result of these unprecedented efforts, the law school has offered a mix of remote and hybrid instruction throughout the academic year. In the autumn quarter, 84% of 1Ls, 60% of 2Ls, 32% of 3Ls, and 58% of LLMs took at least one in-person class. And this implies that 79% of our instructors in autumn 2020 taught in hybrid format. In winter quarter, successful hybrid teaching continued. For 1L classes, 5 course sections had an in-person component, and 4 course sections were completely remote. 21% of upper-level classes, that's 20 classes, had an in-person component. To put this into context, the law school offered the highest percentage of classes with an in-person component during the winter quarter of any unit of the university. We continue our steady state with hybrid classes and mostly remote operations in our current spring quarter. We have accomplished this at a time when some of our peer schools, if we have any peers, remain fully remote. We recently surveyed our students, and in both hybrid and remote formats, students report high rates of satisfaction, over 70%. This is no small feat because we train our students extremely well to be critical. Moreover, we have accomplished this with no known incidents of transmission in our classrooms or buildings. This reflects both the hard work of our administrators in planning for and implementing protocols in the law school, the extraordinary commitment of our faculty to outstanding teaching, and continued compliance by faculty, students, and staff in the building. After being fully remote last spring quarter and throughout last summer, it is encouraging to see students and faculty again in the law school, staying socially distanced, of course. In addition to continuing high-quality instruction, offering support and resources to our students was critically important. The difficulties our students encountered varied: challenges with personal health, the health of family or loved ones, job losses, child and elder care, finances, travel, housing, and technology needs. Our student services worked around the clock to support our students and ensure that their focus remained on their legal educations. The law school provided emergency financial assistance to many students through the Richard Badger Class of '68 Student Support Fund. I know that many of you listening today contributed to this effort, and we are extremely grateful to you for your support. The law school also provided dedicated technology grants to assist students in need. And finally, the law school advocated on behalf of our students across the country and in Illinois to ensure that the state bar exams were administered fairly. At the same time, it was difficult to watch as our cherished traditions and opportunities for everyday engagement were canceled, postponed, or reworked for virtual settings. Reunion weekend is, of course, no exception. Like Reunion, we transitioned as many events and programs as possible to virtual formats. Student organizations hosted over 50 events, reaching over 2,000 attendees during autumn quarter, and we surpassed those numbers by the end of winter quarter. We reimagined many of our traditions by virtually hosting named lectures, such as the Dewey Lecture, journal symposia, and even student events, such as the Entering Students Dinner and the Midway Dinner, now rebranded as Celebrations, in remote format. Faculty continued webinars and lunch talks, an 8-part series on policing, a multi-part series on interdisciplinary approaches to race and the law, a session on the election and the rule of law, the events of January 6th, a conference on the life and career of Earl B. Dickerson, and most recently, an event on the GameStop trading controversy. The Dean of Students' Office successfully hosted virtual coffee messes and wine messes, Chicago's Best Ideas lectures, and other traditional programming. Faculty quickly mobilized to move the work-in-progress lunch, workshops, committee meetings, and informal gatherings and intellectual conversations outside of class. And while we all wish we could be together in person, the new technology, tools like Zoom afford us certain advantages, such as the ability to readily reach wider audiences. For example, our colleagues, Professors David Strauss and Jeff Stone, and Judge Diane Wood, held a university-wide Harper Lecture in the autumn on the future of the Supreme Court with over 700 participants. This incredible engagement reflects the strength of our collective commitment to legal education and our unabashed enthusiasm for ideas and intellectual life. Overall, our focus has been on adapting to new challenges, continuing and advancing the excellence of the law school in a time of tremendous uncertainty, and ensuring seamless support to the work of the faculty and students. Life at the law school is typically marked by continuous engagement and conversation around ideas, in the classrooms and clinics, in the library, in the Green Lounge, or even on the benches by the reflecting pool. I hope it is apparent from my remarks just how hard and successfully our faculty, staff, and administration worked to provide a meaningful, rigorous, and engaging experience for our students. But there is no group of people better suited to speak about the student experience at the law school throughout the past year than our students themselves. Today, I'm delighted to welcome our Dean of Students, Charles Todd, and a group of students to the program. They will talk about life at the law school, both physically on campus and virtually, and how the events of the past year have shaped their law school experience. Dean Todd, I will turn things over to you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
All right. Thank you so much, Tom. I am delighted to have been invited to speak today, and welcome to all of our reunion celebrants. My name is Charles Todd, and I am the law school's Dean of Students. I am thrilled to be joined today by four terrific students. Victor Cedeno, Kate Harris, Travis Gidado, and Gabrielle Dohmen have all graciously offered to spend some time sharing their experiences at the law school throughout the last year and discussing what has changed and what hasn't during the COVID-19 pandemic. Welcome, everyone. To start things off, I would like to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves. If you could please share your name, class year, and your undergraduate institution, and also something you have been involved with, either on campus or professionally, during your time in the law school. Victor, let's start with you.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Victor Cedeno. I'm a 3L, class of 2021, just counting down the weeks. My bachelor's degree is from Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa. And probably my biggest involvement at the law school has been with the Immigrant Rights Clinic. I've had the opportunity to work with the clinic for well over a year now, and I've been able to represent a client on an asylum case and also on a human trafficking, labor trafficking case. And the two cases are actually related via one family. So it's been tremendously rewarding to really help that family chart their path here in America.
That's great. Thanks, Victor. And Kate.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Kate Harris. I'm also a 3L at the law school. I actually started 1L in the same Bigelow as Victor and Travis. So this is fun to wrap this up together. I was involved with the law review and the Federal Criminal Justice Clinic during my time in law school, and I went to the University of Colorado for undergrad.
Great. Thank you, Kate. Travis.
Hi, everyone. My name is Travis Gadado. I was supposed to be in the class of 2021, but I've just assumed the MBA at Booth. So I'm a Jd Mba who'll be graduating in the class of 2022. So my heart will always be with 2021, but I'll have to wait a year. I've been involved with quite a few things at the law school. I think the thing that I've been most proud of is Bridges, which is a first-person writing workshop that allows students to talk about their experiences in law school and bring a new perspective to how the law school experience is unfolded and share perspectives that may not get the same attention during the course of the law school experience. And I went to Yale University for my undergraduate education.
Great. Thanks, Travis. Gabriel.
Hi everyone, I'm Gabrielle Dohmen. I am a 1L, so class of 2023, and for my undergraduate, I went to the University of Notre Dame. The organization I've probably been most involved with at the law school so far has been the Black Law Students Association.
Thank you. Thanks to everyone for those introductions. I would now like to turn things over to life and learning during the pandemic. So Kate, I'm going to start with you. You are a 3L. Let's talk about your experiences on campus before COVID. What makes the law school special, and what were you involved in during your time on campus?
Thanks. I've been thinking about the answer to this question since you posed it to me a couple days ago, and I can't help but think back to Professor Strahilovitz during our orientation right before we started 1L, when he told us, the law school is a special community because of its intellectual environment, but also because of the time that you spend together outside of class. And that proved true for me in my experience. I think the best part about the law school is having those conversations with your friends in the Green Lounge and with professors. Professor Levmore goes from table to table during coffee mess to just discuss fun ideas and pose interesting questions. And that kind of environment you can't replicate. So my favorite part of being in person and learning at the law school pre-COVID times was just spending time with people in my class, spending time with professors and learning from them and learning from their experiences, because I think that's really where we grow and develop in our conversations and in how we think about the law when we interact and we are able to challenge each other and pose questions.
That's great. So let's talk a little bit about your decision to attend classes on campus this year. You have been attending in person. What has that been like?
It's been an interesting experience. I really wanted to go back to the law school for the reasons I said, to just have more interactions with individuals in person and to regain some of that experience. I know it's not the same by any means than it was pre-COVID times. There are restrictions in your interactions. The green lounge tables are no longer facing each other. You're all facing in one direction. But as much as the professors, I think, truly put in an amazing effort to make spring, when COVID first happened, to transition smoothly and ensure that we were all still learning and getting the most out of our law school education, you lost a lot when you weren't in person. So that really drove my choice to go back to the law school and to take classes in person, even with a mask on you and all of your classmates and the professor, because there's something special about being in the same room together, and it honestly helped my attention span, because I think it can be distracting when you're online, and there are many distractions available, whereas I never use my computer in class, so it's just a whole different learning environment. And the law school has transitioned in a number of different ways for hybrid classes. So we have classes in the law school again, so you could be in room 2, and instead of being in a class with 100 of your fellow students, you are instead with maybe 30 of them, which is different. So there are 2 people per row that are sitting in room 2, and we all know how big room 2 can be. I believe my antitrust class had about 150 people in there before COVID. So it's just different. And then there's a room with uh, the screen of all the Zoomers. We call them Zoomers, and then there's Roomers, which are the people in person, and you see all of their faces. So you still get the feel that you're with your classmates. It's different, obviously, but I think it makes for a unique learning environment and far preferable, in my opinion, to the regular one-on-one Zoom classes that you have. And then there's also the Rubenstein Forum, which recently opened, and I was fortunate to have a class there last quarter with evidence. And there you have a lot more people. You have your own individual tables. It's this massive meeting space, so you're able to have more people in a room, and everyone has a microphone when they speak. And the professor is usually toggle between people online participating in cold calling versus individuals in the classroom. So it's a unique learning environment, but I feel like you gained a lot of the spirit that was lost with Zoom, and you're all in the room together, and there's something so special about that. And you can see each other outside after class and just see people you haven't seen in a long time. So I've enjoyed my in-person experiences, and I'm glad I've taken hybrid courses.
That's great. Thank you, Kate. Victor, you are also a 3L. Can you talk about your experience on campus pre-COVID?
Yeah, so I took 5 years to work before coming to law school after getting a graduate degree in public policy, and I was really looking forward to being back in the classroom and in an academic environment. And I really enjoyed my time at the law school. Obviously, just being back in that environment in a classroom with the questioning and in the particular way that lectures in the law school happened was very intense, sometimes too intense, but that kind of, adrenaline rush was like almost welcomed in a way, and it may not be quite the same when it comes to the Zoom world. And I really miss, in particular, the fact that I had a very core group of people that mostly who were in our Bigelow section, that we took most of our classes together. And so there was a rhythm that you develop in every week and every quarter between conversations you would have before and after class, and the people you'd be able to talk to. In particular, I miss and deeply enjoyed the glances, the nonverbal communication that happens in a normal classroom setting when a great comment is made, or maybe when a not so great comment is made. These kinds of the small human interactions that are not quite easy to do on Zoom when I look to my right, but the person might actually be on my screen to the left. So it's hard to replicate that collegial environment at the law school, and I really enjoyed that.
Thank you. So you were remote for autumn and winter quarters. Why did you decide to attend remotely? And if you could just share maybe a little bit more about your experience with remote learning.
Absolutely. So shortly before the pandemic or the shutdown occurred in March, my wife and I had our first baby son. And so we decided that we wanted to obviously be together as a family and stay as safe as possible. And so it was really great to be able to do everything remotely, especially in that first quarter when everything was so uncertain, and even into the second one, having to juggle daycare with everything that was going on with the pandemic. It was very, very helpful to be doing things remote. There's definitely some advantages and disadvantages to doing online learning, in particular law school remote. I think it is more difficult to keep your attention. I too would have only a notebook, so as to not have an electronic device in front of me with all the notifications that happen. And the video can also be sort of distracting as well. You're wondering how you look, what your camera is looking like. So it's just an added component that you just don't worry about when you're in an in-person class. I will say there were certain advantages, especially for my family. I was able to be home. I've seen my son probably a lot more than your average student or lawyer would in the first year. No, not having to go back and forth between classes. I live about a mile away from the law school. It's a much more relaxed in that way. You can use that time more effectively. And I will say for certain kinds of group work, turns out that the remote environment can be very, very helpful. Not to get into too many details, but we have a particular class where we have basically a Supreme Court setup, and we have to discuss with each other the opinions and edits. And I actually found that the remote version of that was better than I think it would have been if we all tried to meet in person all the time in a normal setting. So definitely some pros and cons, but ultimately decided to go back once both my wife and I were fully vaccinated to make sure that I had at least one more chance to be in the classroom before I graduated.
That's great. I'm glad to hear you were able to spend that time with your son and family. So it sounds like your decision to switch to in-person mode in the spring was partially motivated by your vaccination. So I'm curious how it's been now that you're back in person and how that's differed from being remote.
I think it's great. I think there are challenges to having the blended environment, as the professors, unfortunately, are having to now try to juggle both methods at the same time. Some are better prepared than others. Um, but I think for me, it's it's just a more natural flow of discussion with the professors. You can tell the professors feel more comfortable asking questions and engaging in a back and forth with the person in front of you and with the classmates. I think they've done a tremendous job of involving the remote, the Zoomers, as Kate calls them, in the setting. But it's just like I said, the small glances, the small interactions that happen normally in the flow of a lecture, even that silence that you can just tell that people are stumped by a question by the professor. The same might happen on a Zoom, but it's just hard to know, like, is anybody paying attention, as opposed to actually this is just a really difficult thing we're dealing with. So I really appreciate being in that environment. I think the law school has done a tremendous job of making it feel safe. We have ample space. The flow of the people walking in and around has made us feel comfortable. Of course, being fully vaccinated has helped bring that anxiety down. But I think even if we hadn't been, I would have strongly considered it now that I've seen the way that the setup is made up.
Great. Thank you for sharing your experience. Gabriel, I would like to get your experience as a 1L student. Your experience at the law school has all been within the past year. Can you talk about your decision to come to law school during a pandemic and what stood out to you about the University of Chicago during the admissions process?
Yeah, so when I applied, I didn't know anything about a coronavirus like most of the world before the spring of 2020. But by the time it was, by the time it was the point where I had to make my decision, I was very aware that COVID-19 was around and it seemed to be around to stay, at least for the beginning. So at the time, I was working as an engineer at a manufacturing plant, and I definitely thought, should I just work for another year and not go to law school? But I think that the pandemic has brought out a lot of legal issues that seemed really exciting. You know, the effects on businesses, the criminal law potential reforms with George Floyd's death. And I realized that being at a law school during this time and learning about that background was probably the most exciting place I could be. And that's kind of where U Chicago started to stand out. So it was clear that U Chicago was pretty, I want to use the word agile, but that seems weird. But they were agile in terms of like they were responding to the current events that were the reason that I wanted to go to law school. So the admissions process paired me with a professor who worked in policing reform, and that was very important to me at the time. And the Admitted Students Weekend talked a little bit about the law and the pandemic and how that might be affected long term. And so it seems like U Chicago was the place where if I wanted to learn about these new legal issues, they were already starting to work through them, and it would be a good place to kind of get my finger on the pulse and start to learn about them with them.
That's great. So let's now shift to your experience this year on campus. Can you tell us about the types of classes you've had, what modality they've been in? Have they been hybrid or remote?
So these first 2 quarters, I've primarily been in doctrinal courses. So torts, civil procedure, contracts, property, and elements. And those were all a mixture of hybrid and remote. So even for the ones that were fully remote, the professors were doing, I think, a good job of trying to give us the classic law school experience. So still doing cold calls. They tried doing breakout rooms for students to be able to talk to each other. This quarter, I am fully remote and I'm in more electives and practical classes. So, when I say practical, I mean like our transactional law class, which is where, as a class, we're going through all of the legal problems that might come from building a real business from the ground up. And we're also doing a class on legislative and statutory interpretation. In terms of electives, I'm in criminal procedure 2, from bail to jail, and constitutional law 3, which is substantive and due process. And both of those seem very relevant to the reasons I came to law school. They're talking about race and criminal law. And so those, I think, have been really interesting. And like I said before, the professors have been doing a really good job of making sure that remote doesn't feel like less. And so I think that I'm still getting a good experience with those.
That's wonderful. How have you been able to build community in this environment? And I'm wondering if you could touch a little bit about your community across your classes, with your fellow students, but also with faculty and administrators.
Yeah, so I think that I've learned from all of this that U Chicago law students are maybe uniquely self-starting. So even before classes started, people were sending out notes like, let's do a Zoom game night, or let's meet up at Promontory Point after class and bring blankets and sit on the grass. So in terms of 1L community, I think that I could honestly say that I've had a conversation with the majority of my class at this point. And I have my study groups and things like that. So I feel like I know people. I think the administration has also done a good job in terms of trying to bring us together. So doing the hybrid classes was huge for meeting people, putting us in different small groups for orientation, stuff like that. So I think there's been a lot of opportunities to build 1L community. In terms of community across all the classes, I think the student organizations have done a big effort in terms of helping 1Ls meet upperclassmen. So I have mentors all across the University of Chicago Law School, and all of them have helped a lot in terms of introducing me to their friends and helping me with classes and questions about, getting through law school, basically. In terms of faculty, all of the faculty that I've had classes with so far have made an effort to have lunches with us, virtual lunches, of course, and speak with us through office hours, and have had their virtual doors open in case we needed to ever chat with them. So I would say I've also been able to interact with them a lot more than I thought I would when I realized I would be attending a mostly virtual law school.
That's great. That's really good to hear. All right, Travis, that brings us to you. So you have finished 2 years of law school and you are in your MBA year. Can you tell us about your experience being fully remote this year compared to your experience of being in person in prior years?
Of course. So, thinking about this most recent year, I agree with Kate that I think so much of what made being in person so great was the informality. You would run into professors as we were walking around the halls, you would see your friends, you'd be able to take part in organizational meetings, and it kind of gave you an opportunity to forge connections that may not have been forged in the same way virtually. And plus, in a virtual setting, I think there's a bit more intentionality about what you do. So, because you aren't really able to spontaneously do things in the same way, you have to plan your decision making a bit more and figure out who it is you want to speak to at any given time, when you want to meet up, when the organizations should get together. So that informality is something that is missed in the virtual setting. But at the same time, I think, being a business school student this year, and especially given the reputation of business school as being a place of socializing and networking, all sorts of new opportunities to build those communities have popped up. So whether it's, as Gabby was saying, getting together outside of class in a socially distanced way, or finding other activities to do online, game nights online. These sorts of opportunities have provided a way to build these connections that ordinarily would have been formed in person, but are still able to be formed in a really powerful way in the Zoom world. And I actually think that I, much like Gabby, have been able to meet almost all of my classmates over the last 6 months, and I look forward to seeing them in person, hopefully next year, or very early next year, and building upon those bonds that have been created and forged in the digital setting.
That's great. So, as part of the Jd Mba program, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how Booth and the law school have handled classes this year. Have you seen similarities or differences in the remote environment?
Of course. So I think one similarity across the two schools that is important to note is this has given professors an opportunity to experiment with pedagogy and the approaches of interacting with students. I think you're so used to maybe running into a professor after class or going to their office hours, but whether it's discussion boards that are used via Canvas, which is the online system that is used to provide homework and other school-related discussions, or even just being able to pick up the phone and call a professor that I might have a question for. There's been much more openness with more non-traditional means of interacting with professors and engaging with the material. And I think that's been a really powerful opportunity that the pandemic has presented. And I hope that there are some aspects of that that will funnel into the return to in-person learning. I think there's a lot that people have learned over the course of the last year that would be really, really useful to integrate into the in-person class experience. And that hybridization, I don't see going away anytime soon. But I hope that, as we're able to come back in person, that those aspects that have worked will stick, and then the things that haven't been as successful may fade into the ether.
Good. So, how have you been able to stay active in student organizations and connected to your peers while being in a remote setting?
Sure. So I think what was interesting at the beginning was as we were all trying to figure out what was going to happen, was this just going to be a 2 week experience or a month? Was this something we were going to have to experience for the long haul? I think there was still a bit of reluctance as to when to meet. Should we meet? Should we wait until things calm down? And then before you knew it, everybody was meeting on Zoom. All sorts of virtual phone calls were happening. All sorts of new approaches were being taken to try to build those communities back up, especially in the early days of the pandemic when there was still so much uncertainty about how the virus spread, what the danger entailed with respect to meeting, even in a socially distanced capacity. I know that was tough. I mean, as a, thinking ahead to 3L at the time, you know, I knew how precious this time was. I really wanted to spend that time with my Bigelow, with Bolsa, with these communities that I had become so entrenched in over the course of the last 2 years. And so to think that that was being curtailed in a meaningful way was disheartening. But again, speaking to the resilience of the U Chicago community, we found new ways to get together. We found new opportunities for engagement. And so whether it's Zoom meetings for Bridges or game nights for Bolsa, or getting with members of our Bigelow on other social media platforms and connecting that way, we found other ways to keep those communities strong, to keep them vibrant, and to continue to be abreast of how everybody is doing and just checking in to make sure, at a minimum, that the people that you loved at this school were okay. And I think that was the most important part for me, was realizing that, whether it's, being able to see Victor's kid, from a socially distanced, perspective, or, hopefully being able to take part in some of the graduation ceremonies and seeing off my original class at the law school, and then looking ahead to Bolsa and the ways that we're going to continue to stay connected and transition a new leadership as early as next week. We've found ways, we've made it work as best as we possibly can, and in some ways, I think we've all grown significantly from it, and I think it'll only make our campus community even stronger when we're able to come back in person in the fall or thereafter.
That's great. It's really good to hear that out of this experience, there have been so many positive aspects that you've been able to find. So I just want to thank each of you for these insights into your experience this year. And as we wrap things up, I would like to shift to looking ahead. So Travis, coming back to you, and Gabriel, what are you looking forward to for next year? Travis, let's start with you.
Perfect. So, of course, I'm looking forward to returning in person. I'm looking forward to giving people hugs. I'm looking forward to high fives, the green lounge, the sounds of people coming in and out, the 1Ls with no idea what they're doing, just trying to figure out where their classrooms are and remembering that period vividly. I'm looking forward to those experiences as soon as possible. But at the same time, I'm also just looking forward to reflecting on everything that we've experienced together, reflecting on what we have managed to overcome, because this has definitely been a period of overcoming for so many of us. I mean, it's something that we've never experienced in our lifetimes, and hopefully we'll never experience again. And so reflecting on this time, what did we learn? How did we change as a society? What can we improve upon as future lawyers, future business people? What are the things that we're going to have to bring into those communities, into those environments where we hope to make an impact? That is why I think is going to be most exciting to see when we're finally able to get back together next year.
Good. Gabriel, same question to you. What are you looking forward to?
Like Travis said, I'm very much looking forward to the ability to take classes fully in person, to meet some of the classmates that I haven't been able to meet so far. But on a more personal level, I'm kind of just looking forward to the normal 2L things. Like I'm going to be able to pick my classes, and I'm going to be able to maybe do a clinic. I might go to a professor's office hours in person. So I think that those things are maybe more exciting than they would have been otherwise, but I'm very excited for that.
So Kate and Victor, turning to you now, since you are both getting ready to graduate. I am curious how the last year has prepared you for your transition to professional life and whatever's coming next. Kate, let's start with you.
This is a great question, and something that I am grateful for to the law school is that the law school, many of the events and experiences that they provide students did not stop during the pandemic. So, for instance, in the fall and this whole year, I've been involved in the moot court competition and going to argue in front of 3 judges in 2 weeks. And so, for me, I've been super grateful that I've had the experience of actually arguing in front of alumni. Alumni from all over the country were able to participate because it was online, which was a unique experience and something that you don't have when it's purely in person. And then in the winter, we could argue in front of professors, and then now arguing in front of judges. And as we know, the legal profession, that did not stop. People are still arguing in front of courts and arguing in front of the Supreme Court in a different environment. And so having the opportunity to continue on, it would have been very easy for the school to say, no, we can't continue on with moot court to the virtual environment, but it didn't. It provided these opportunities. And so I feel I've gained a lot of technical skills from that experience, and I feel more comfortable going into the workplace because I've had those opportunities. And then I think Gabrielle was mentioning that the law school's full of self-starters, but it's different being in a remote age and still being a self-starter, right? Because you have to build and create connections with people you do not know. And for me, that was one of the hardest parts of my summer experience working at a firm, because I'm going into a new environment where I don't know a soul. Whereas when I'm in online classes, I at least know faces because I was able to experience that pre-pandemic. And so going through and learning how you can initiate through a virtual age, I think are skills that maybe we didn't necessarily have before we were forced to do so, right? So professors and having smaller environments where you're working as teams and clinic and learning how to engage with that in an online virtual arena has been tremendously valuable. And so I feel confident going into my clerkships and then going into my future experiences where I'll be able to navigate whatever it looks like, because we haven't necessarily gone to the point where we're fully in person again. There's going to be probably a lot of mix. And now that I've had that experience with, hybrid classes, a hybrid environment, I've had the full remote environment last spring. And I've had the in-person environment with the 1L and my first half of 2L. So I think in so many ways, the law school prepared me for really whatever comes next. And I'm just grateful that my experiences and my opportunities for growth did not end purely because we're in a pandemic.
Thank you. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you in the moot court finals coming up. So Victor, same question to you. How has the last year prepared you for the transition to your professional life?
Yeah, there are two particular things that I'm very grateful for. And maybe the law school's somewhat lucky in our quarter system and in our setup, but as Kate mentioned, the legal field did not stop, and neither did the law school. We had smooth transitions into this environment. There was very little disruption within the core law school experience outside of what we all experience within society, and so I appreciated that we were able to keep that going. And then the other thing is the clinic experience that I had. The world, lots of things were going on, but my clients' cases were still going on. And having that experience of being in a clinic, I think it's very, very important for every law school to have high quality clinics. As somebody who worked for 5 years, I feel very comfortable going back into a professional setting, but not so much going into the legal field itself, which is very different. And to be able to be in an environment where I have questions to my professor, but ultimately neither she nor I know what the ultimate answer is, because there is no ultimate answer. That's what it's like to practice in real life. Unlike being in a classroom and where there's very specific ways of evaluating. So the fact that we were able to continue to do that, continue to work with our clients, and work throughout all of that uncertainty, I think that's going to be really, really helpful as a clerk and then working at a firm as well. I'm very grateful to have that experience.
Thanks, Victor. Unfortunately, I think that is all the time we have for today. Victor, Kate, Travis, Gabriel, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to talk with us. I am certain that our alumni and the audience enjoyed hearing not only about your experiences at the law school throughout the past year, but also about your deep involvement with activities, organizations, and academics, as well as your many accomplishments. And with that, I am happy to turn the program back over to Dean Miles. Tom?
Thank you, Charles, and thank you, Victor, Kate, Travis, and Gabrielle. I know I speak for everyone when I say just how much we enjoyed hearing your thoughts and how impressed we are with your enthusiasm, resilience, and commitment to your legal education in these challenging times. Thank you for being such wonderful ambassadors for the law school. And before we continue, I would be remiss if I did not highlight for our graduates how our ability to respond quickly and effectively to these unprecedented situations would not be possible without the financial support that so many of you provide. Thank you. And now I'll provide an overview of more standard law school business. Our standard business has continued and thrived this year as it has in recent years. I will begin with a brief update on admissions and career services. With incredible faculty and a rich classroom and student experience, applications to the law school are going up and up. Last year, the pandemic hit just as our admissions office was planning to welcome students to campus for Admitted Students Weekend. Instead, our admissions office quickly pivoted to a fully remote week of programming for admitted students. These challenges did not prevent us from securing an outstanding class of 2023. We were the only law school in the so-called top 14 to raise the credentials of its entering class last year. We lifted the median LSAT score by 1 point to 171, and we welcomed the most diverse entering class in our law school's history. The 188-member class of 2023 is 48% female and 51% male. And 44.7% of the class identifies as African American, Latino, Asian, Native American, Native Hawaiian, or 2 or more races. 37 states and 92 undergraduate institutions are also represented, with the most students coming to us from just across the Midway in the college. The application cycle for the class of 2024 is nearing completion. The admissions team reports receiving over 6,500 applications to the Jd program. This reflects a 33% increase in applications over the last year. Early decision applications were up 41% last year. Nationally, applications to law schools are up over 20%, and we expect to welcome an incredibly accomplished and diverse group of students to campus this fall. Our LLM program is wrapping up its admission cycle as well. Over half of the LLM class of 2021 chose to defer attendance to the next academic year. This makes for a highly competitive admissions process this year for the LLM class of 2022. We are grateful for the work of our admissions team as they continue to raise the bar for our incoming class each year. We are also fortunate that despite all the uncertainties of the past year, our graduates continue to be much sought after by employers. For the summer 2021 recruiting season, our on-campus interviewing program took place virtually in December. We, like other law schools, continue to call it OCI, on-campus interviewing, but it was a remote program this year. Abbreviations are sticky things. The Office of Career Services recently announced to employers and students that we will join our peer schools in returning to summer OCI. Although OCI will return to the summer, it will remain in virtual format. The Office of Career Services will also build on the successes of the virtual public service interview program. This new program, launched during the pandemic, is open to all public sector employers and will take place in late summer prior to the start of the academic year. The Office of Career Services is actively assisting our graduating students with jobs in clerkships, public interest, government service, and firms. Our employment numbers continue to be quite strong across all sectors. We are always anxious to share updates on our most recent graduates, and our official reporting on employment numbers occurs in April. So I can share with you our final employment statistics for the class of 2020, which are hot off the press. The class of 2020 reported 98% employment at the ABA reporting date in April 2021, consistent with prior years. The majority of graduates, over 60%, pursue careers at law firms. In an all-time high, just over 30% of the class are clerking for judges immediately after graduation, and over 5% will work in public service or government roles. The small remainder of our students will work in corporate positions or go on to pursue graduate degrees. I'm happy to report that the class of 2021 is trending towards the excellent outcomes of our recent graduating classes, including the class of 2020. Perhaps one of our most remarkable achievements is our rate of placing students in clerkships. As I noted, the class of 2020 has an all-time high of just over 30% of the graduating class having a clerkship, a number that exceeded last year's high of 27%. Key factors in our success include significant faculty involvement and support, increased counseling and administrative support from the Office of Career Services, and proactive messaging to students that clerkships can be an option for all. Of course, we are exceptionally proud of our graduates who go on to clerk on the Supreme Court. The 2020 term marks the 48th straight year in which a law school graduate has clerked on the nation's highest court, with 7 graduates clerking this term. James Burnham, 09, is clerking for Justice Gorsuch. Amy Upshaw, 16, and Philip Cooper, 17, are clerking for Justice Clarence Thomas. Patrick Fuster, class of 18, is clerking for Chief Justice John Roberts. Nick Harper, 08, and Madeline Lansky, 16, are clerking for Justice Amy Coney Barrett, and Krista Perry, 16, is clerking for Justice Neil Gorsuch. This follows the incredibly successful 2019 and 2018 terms as well. And we recently shared the wonderful news about the 2021 term. I am thrilled to report that we will once again have 7 graduates clerking at the Supreme Court. And this year, these 7 accomplished graduates will clerk for 7 different justices. Christina Gay, 20, will clerk for Chief Justice John Roberts. Manuel Valle, 17, will clerk for Justice Clarence Thomas. Joel Wax, 18, will clerk for Justice Stephen Breyer. Andrew Wax, 19, will clerk for Justice Elena Kagan. John Henry Thompson, 18, will clerk for Justice Neil Gorsuch. Sarah Welch, 19, will clerk for Justice Brett Kavanaugh. And Michael Heckman, 16, will clerk for Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Of course, it will be challenging to top the 2020 and 21 terms, but I am confident that our graduates will continue to enjoy great clerkship success. And hopefully, I will one day be able to report that we have students clerking for each one of the 9 justices in a single term. In addition to supporting students wishing to pursue clerkship opportunities, the law school is also committed to supporting those students wishing to pursue careers serving the public interest. We provide student public service funding for over 100 1Ls and 2Ls annually. The Pro Bono Service Initiative encourages students to volunteer their time and talent and challenges our law students to complete at least 50 hours of pro bono service before they graduate. Participants in the Pro Bono Service Initiative also enhance their legal education by gaining exposure to important legal issues and a hands-on opportunity to assist in representations. I'm proud to share that 74 members of the class of 2020 contributed more than 12,000 hours to this initiative. We also provide loan repayment assistance to students working in public interest positions after graduation, and the James C. Hormel Public Interest Scholarship provides a high award scholarship each year to an entering student who has a demonstrated commitment to public service. Finally, our postgraduate Public Interest Fellowship Program provides support to graduates to work in full-time eligible public service host agencies for a term of 1 year, beginning no later than the autumn after graduation. 50 graduates have completed 1-year public interest law fellowships at public service agencies across the nation and abroad, and 96% of these fellows remain in public interest positions to this day. We are proud to support students pursuing public interest careers, as well as providing programmatic opportunities in a wide range of disciplines. While it is impossible for me to provide an update on all of our programs and initiatives, I wanted to briefly highlight a few that might be of particular interest. First, the Roomstein Scholars Program continues to have a transformative impact on our students. Thanks to the generosity of David Rubenstein, class of 1973, we continue to consistently attract and support extraordinary students. We are incredibly grateful for this program and the support it provides for so many of our students. We also recently launched a 3-year accelerated Jd Mba program, which furthers our collaboration with the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. This program provides the leading joint degree legal and business education to our students. Interest in this program has been tremendous, and we have received nearly 150 applications to the program so far this year, an increase of 81% over last year's cycle. The accelerated Jd Mba serves as a companion to our highly successful Doctor of Business Leadership program. The Doctor of program provides students with exposure to business, but also allows them to maintain their focus on law by offering a subset of core law and business courses taught by sensational Booth faculty within the law school. These courses are available to all law students, not just those in the doctoral program. The combination of the accelerated Jd Mba and the doctoral program, along with the traditional 4-year Jd Mba, allows students with an interest in both law and business to calibrate precisely the amount of business training they wish to integrate into their legal educations. We have also launched 2 new research centers designed to bring a deep focus to first, law and finance, and second, constitutional law, 2 areas of great importance to legal scholars and practitioners. The Center on Law and Finance is directed by Professor Anthony Casey, a leading scholar of corporate reorganization, corporate governance, and financial regulation. The interdisciplinary initiative brings academics and practitioners together through conferences, workshops, and other events to explore a fast-changing field that grapples increasingly with complex issues around investor activism, venture capital restructuring, distressed investments, valuation disputes, and more. The Constitutional Law Institute is directed by Professor William Bode, a leading scholar of constitutional law and interpretation. In addition to advancing and sharing scholarship related to constitutional law, the Institute creates venues for substantive and respectful debate on important topics and convene leading academics to examining long-standing constitutional issues that affect American society. Another area of great pride is our clinical programs. I'm delighted to share that our clinics continue to provide a broad range of offerings for students to gain practical and experiential skills. This slide shows the wide range of clinical offerings available to our students. We are pleased to provide such an expansive set of clinics, and happily, all students who wish to participate in clinical programs are able to do so. We also recently launched our new Immigrants' Rights Clinic at the law school, led by Professor Nicole Hallett. Nicole and her students in the clinic hit the ground running. For example, the Immigrant Rights Clinic has filed a lawsuit against the Department of Homeland Security seeking records regarding the failure of facilities to protect immigrant detainees from coronavirus. In addition, our clinics are highly decorated, and their work often appears in local and national media. Last year, the Federal Criminal Justice Clinic received the highest honor from the Clinical Legal Education Association for its groundbreaking fake stash house litigation. This award was the 2020 CLIA Award for Excellence in a Public Interest Case or Project. In giving the award, the association noted the wide-ranging impact of the clinic's work, stating that its litigation strategy, and here I quote, was so successful that lawyers adopted it to change the law in other circuits, and it promises to produce just outcomes for hundreds of people unfairly targeted and incarcerated nationwide. Congratulations to all our clinics. Of course, one of the defining features of our law school, in addition to classroom and experiential learning, is the extraordinary brilliance of our faculty. The tradition of our law school is that our faculty are the most innovative thinkers and scholars in the legal academy. They have shaped entire fields of legal scholarship. This tradition of innovation continued during the past year. Our faculty members have written many dozens of articles and contributions to collected volumes, as well as published half a dozen books. Our faculty's expertise has reached well beyond academic venues. Our faculty colleagues published over 200 op-eds and significant blog posts in the past year, plus furnished quotations in many hundreds of media interviews, from Der Spiegel to the Indian Express to the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, and beyond. More than ever, our faculty utilize technology and media to share their expertise, appearing in dozens of television interviews and podcasts, and sharing content across social media. Faculty recruitment continues to be a top priority for the law school, and our Faculty Appointments Committee has worked diligently to secure the next generation of outstanding faculty. We began the 2020-2021 academic year with 5 new faculty members. Farah Peterson, Professor of Law, joined us from the University of Virginia Law School. Her research and teaching interests include legal history and statutory interpretation. Professor Peterson clerked for Justice Stephen Breyer on the U.S. Supreme Court and for Judge Calabresi on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. Professor Sonia Starr joined us from the University of Michigan Law School. She specializes in criminal law and criminal justice, particularly the use of predictive algorithms in sentencing and bail, and racial disparities in sentencing and prosecution. Professor Starr clerked for then-Judge Merrick Garland on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, as well as for the criminal tribunals for Rwanda and the former Yugoslavia. We also have 3 new assistant professors joining us. Bridget Fahey, who focuses her scholarship on constitutional law, contract law, and the theory and practice of American federalism. You will see Bridget later this weekend when she delivers a faculty masterclass. Ha-Jin Kim, who specializes in the impact of social psychology and economics on environmental law and environmental regulation. And Joshua Macy. Professor Macy's teaching interests include administrative law, environmental law, energy law, corporate law, bankruptcy, and the regulation of financial institutions. While many of you are familiar with the accolades our senior faculty members often receive, one of which I will touch on later in this talk, these accolades are not limited to our more veteran colleagues. Earlier this year, Josh published an academic article on bankruptcies and environmental law. There are 2 top prizes for scholarship in environmental law, the Morrison Prize from ASU and the LPAR Environmental Law and Policy Annual Review Award. Josh's paper received both of these awards. It's outstanding for a scholar of any rank to publish a paper that received both of these awards, and it is remarkable to do so as a first-year faculty member. And finally, a few short weeks ago, we announced the arrival of our newest faculty member, Curtis Bradley, who will join us this summer from Duke University. Kurt is a renowned scholar whose scholarly expertise spans the areas of international law and the U.S. legal system and the constitutional law of foreign affairs and federal jurisdiction. His courses include international law, foreign relations law, and federal courts. We couldn't be more delighted to welcome these new faculty members to our ranks, and I hope that you will have the opportunity to hear from them all very soon. In addition, this past year, 2 new named faculty chairs were established at the law school. Professor Anthony Casey, a member of the class of 2002, who I mentioned previously in connection with his leadership of the Center on Law and Finance, received the Donald M. Ephraim Professorship in Law and Economics. Professor Casey is the inaugural holder of this new chair, which was established by the Donald M. Ephraim Family Foundation in honor of our graduate from the class of 1955, Donald M. Ephraim. In addition, Professor Herschella G. Conyers, also a graduate of the law school, received the Lillian E. Kramer Clinical Professorship in Public Interest Law. There are multiple exciting firsts with this chair. Herschella is the inaugural holder of this new chair. Herschella is the first clinical professor to hold a named professorship in the law school, and if I'm not mistaken, anywhere in the university. And the Kramer Professorship is the first chair in the law school named solely for a female graduate of the law school. I am grateful to the Ephraim family and to Lillian Kramer for their generous support of faculty excellence in establishing these named professorships. Finally, I'm delighted to share that Genevieve Lakier was promoted from assistant professor to full professor and received tenure. Genevieve is a talented academic whose research explores the connection between culture and the law. Her scholarship includes the cultural history of the First Amendment, and in recent months, she has frequently been quoted in the press discussing free speech in the age of social media. In addition to our new professorships and faculty promotions, I'm delighted to share news of multiple promotions in our clinics. Claudia Flores of the Global Human Rights Clinic and Judith Miller and Erica Zunkel of the Federal Criminal Justice Clinic have been promoted to full clinical professor of law. Additionally, Emily Underwood, the Blum Helfand director of the Innovation Clinic, has been promoted to associate clinical professor of law. The law school has a tremendous legacy of powerful and empowering teaching from Levy and Blum, Menshikoff and Curry, and many others. It's wonderful to see the next generation of faculty excellence emerging at the law school. I could speak for hours about the excellence of our faculty and the many awards and recognitions they receive. But I would like to highlight one piece of recent news about one of our esteemed colleagues. Martha Nussbaum was named the winner of the 2021 Holberg Prize, one of the largest international awards given to an outstanding researcher in the arts and humanities, the social sciences, law, or theology. In giving the award, the Holberg Prize Committee cited the breadth and influence of Martha's work, as well as what it called her stupendous intellectual energy, productivity to address issues of major academic concern, as well as issues that have concrete economic, political, and legal impact. Martha will receive the Holberg Prize at a ceremony in early June. We are incredibly proud of her and extend our congratulations to her on this tremendous honor. Now, at this point in a live program, I would transition to taking questions from the audience. Unsurprisingly, this virtual format has not dampened the inquisitive nature of our alumni, and many of you submitted questions to me during the registration process. I'm delighted to answer several of those questions now. A first question. The past year has been challenging not only due to the pandemic, but also due to the many incidents involving policing, race, and the criminal justice system. How has the law school addressed the current social justice movements and advanced diversity and inclusion? This is a great question. This past year, events in Minnesota, in our own city, and across the nation disturbed and angered all of us. It is a particularly hard moment for our country. In response to the killing of George Floyd and the national conversations about policing and racial justice, the faculty did something very much in keeping with our core mission of advancing knowledge, teaching, and offering a range of perspectives. The faculty organized a colloquium on the crisis in policing in early June. A 7-part virtual series followed, featuring discussions between faculty members from our academic and clinical faculty. In the autumn, this was followed by a 5-part interdisciplinary series on race and racism hosted by Professor Aziz Huq. In addition to sharing expertise and multiple viewpoints, the law school aims to equip our students with a transformative legal education, a legal education which will enable our graduates to address the most complex and pressing legal questions and societal challenges. To do this, the law school provides direct resources to our students. 2 years ago, we created a new resource within the Dean of Students office, the Director of Diversity, and we welcomed Nydia Stewart into this role last summer. This year, Nydia built on the successes of earlier diversity and inclusion initiatives and has supported students throughout a particularly challenging moment in time. One example is our pre-orientation program, or as we call it, PREO. PREO is open to students of color, first-generation students, and other students for whom the transition to law school may present particular challenges. This program helps equip them with the tools for success at the law school. There is a focus on both professional and interpersonal skills, as well as an introduction to the Legal Academy. Last summer's program welcomed 20 students, 4 of whom participated remotely. We have also woven other programming and initiatives into the fabric of our academic year. Our Diversity and Inclusion Grant Initiative encourages efforts that support diversity and inclusion and collaboration at the law school. To achieve this, the Dean of Students office will fund student-led proposals up to $5,000 for initiatives that enhance collaboration, build community, and embrace diversity and inclusion. The Martha C. Nussbaum Student Roundtables support the University of Chicago's long-standing commitment to free expression and open discourse. The roundtables were endowed by Professor Nussbaum in 2019 with the purpose of bringing together students and faculty with diverse viewpoints in a respectful, substantive discussion on an important legal topic. Students are encouraged to engage and confront ideas that may be different from their own with a spirit of civil and vigorous debate. The law school also celebrated the important contributions of diverse graduates to better understand our history and guide our future. Earlier this month, we held the second of a 2-part conference marking the 100th anniversary of Earl B. Dickerson's graduation from the law school. At the event, I was delighted to announce that we have commissioned a portrait of Mr. Dickerson, the first Black JD graduate of the law school. The portrait will provide tremendous inspiration to all our students. Here's another question. Can you talk about the upcoming presidential transition at the university with the appointment of President Paul Alivisatos, and what will this mean for the law school? Also a great question. All of you should have received a message from the chair of the university's Board of Trustees, Joe Neubauer, in late February, announcing that the Board of Trustees had elected Paul Alivisatos as the 14th president of the University of Chicago. An accomplished leader in higher education and a world-renowned scientist, Paul is currently Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost at the University of California, Berkeley. He is also a professor and the Samsung Distinguished Chair in Nanoscience and Nanotechnology Research in the Department of Chemistry and the former director of the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. Following an extensive international search, Paul was elected president at the meeting of the university's Board of Trustees on February 25th. The search committee was comprised of trustees and faculty members, and I know they worked tirelessly in their efforts to select the new president. I'm proud to say that out of the 12 trustees on the search committee, 5 were law school alumni. And Professor Randy Picker represented the law school as one of 10 faculty search committee members selected from across the university. As a result, Paul became quite familiar with the law school throughout the search process. Paul will assume his role on September 1st and will of course succeed Robert J. Zimmer, who has served as president since 2006. Bob will transition into a new role as chancellor of the university on September 1st. A native of Chicago, Paul is also a proud University of Chicago alumnus, having received his bachelor's degree in chemistry in 1981. A fact about our new president that should have wider appreciation is that he received the university's Alumni Award for Professional Achievement in 2006. The nomination letters submitted on his behalf were full of wonderful comments about his great scientific accomplishments, but also about him personally. Here is an especially interesting one. In Paul, you discover an extremely smart and clever person, someone who understands new ideas before you finish your sentence, who finds solutions to problems in record time, knows an enormous range of facts, and knows the scientific literature like few others. Paul will work closely with Bob in his new role as chancellor, in which Bob will focus on high-level strategic initiatives, stewardship and development of key relationships, and guide high-level fundraising. In his nearly 15-year tenure as president, Bob increased the university's eminence and helped raise its status among the world's top research universities. Bob will continue his essential contributions to the university as chancellor. For those of you who have not yet had the opportunity to do so, I encourage you to watch the video that Paul shared with the university community shortly after his selection. I think it speaks not only to his enthusiasm and intellect, but also to the type of leader he will be. I've had an opportunity to meet with Paul, and I very much look forward to working with him and introducing him to our alumni very soon. Another question. We are living in a time when free expression, particularly free expression on university and college campuses, seems to be eroding. Can you talk about the universities and the law school's commitment to freedom of expression? Is freedom of expression still alive and well at the law school? This is a terrific question. The freedom of expression is a core element in the history and culture of the University of Chicago. A commitment to the principles of free speech and academic freedom and their importance to rigorous and open scholarly inquiry can be traced back to the earliest days of the university. And much of this history begins right here at the law school. In February 1967, President George W. Beadle appointed a committee on the role of the university in political and social action, chaired by law professor and First Amendment scholar Harry Calvin, Jr. The committee was charged with providing a statement on the university's role in political and social action. The statement that emerged from the committee, which is colloquially referred to as the Calvin Report, remains one of the most powerful statements of the university's core values and aspirations. It states that the mission of the university is the discovery and dissemination of knowledge. That mission requires that the university should encourage the widest range of views within its community, and in the main, it is not for the university to take collective positions on political matters. More recently, in 2012, responding to an increase in challenges to expression and academic freedom at campuses across the country, our faculty member and former dean and former provost and 50th reunion celebrant, Jeff Stone, led another university committee. That committee drafted a statement outlining the importance of free expression in academic inquiry. This statement, that immediately became known as the Stone Principles or the Chicago Principles, has been adopted by more than 70 other universities. And in 2016, Professor Randy Picker chaired the Committee on University Discipline for Disruptive Conduct. This committee clarified the distinction between protest and disruption and made recommendations, which the university adopted, for disciplining disruptive conduct that interferes with the freedom of inquiry or debate. One of President Zimmer's greatest legacies will be his commitment to the freedom of expression, and I know that it was something the board considered very deeply as they interviewed presidential candidates. Here at the law school, freedom of expression is an integral part of our community and our educational experience. We emphasize free expression in 1L orientation through exercises in which faculty members lead the incoming 1Ls through a series of hypotheticals that consider free expression. Several students noted that this was one of, if not the primary portion of orientation from which they benefited the most. And the Martha C. Nussbaum roundtables, which I mentioned previously, also offer the opportunity for vigorous and respectful debate. As you can see, the freedom of expression is indeed alive and well at the law school. Thank you again for submitting your questions. I hope that at your next reunion, I will address them live and in person. Of course, what I have shared with you today is just a small snapshot of the law school throughout the past year and does not capture our activity beyond Hyde Park. While I certainly miss seeing our alumni and friends in person, this virtual environment has provided us the opportunity to connect in ways we could not have imagined prior to the pandemic. Over the last year, the law school has hosted virtual alumni events, ranging from Bigelow Moot Court to faculty masterclass events, such as legal issues in the Game of Thrones and ethical issues in AI design. We have stood true to our traditions through our first Monday and Emeritus lectures, and we have also undertaken new virtual programming. These programs include our Alumni Spotlight Series, a discussion with faculty and students from the Abrams Environmental Law Clinic, a screening of a documentary about slums in India, followed by a conversation with the producing faculty members, and coffee mess networking events. I am proud to share that in the past year, we have hosted over 30 events with over 2,700 alumni attending from all over the world. Some other notable events include partnering with Northwestern Law for a networking event to give our alumni exposure to Chicago area networking outside of the UChicago law community. We are also planning a Great Lakes networking event for May that will include Northwestern and University of Michigan law alumni. Our programs are also reaching our international alumni. Professor Emily Underwood's Ethics in Artificial Intelligence program had alumni register from 11 different countries. Several of these events can be found on our website, and I encourage all of you to take advantage of the many programs that are available. None of us can be certain where the coming months will take us, but I am certain that with the support of our dedicated alumni, our extraordinary faculty, and our brilliant students, the law school will continue to remain at the forefront of legal education, both now and well into the future. Thank you for joining me here today. From all of us at the law school, congratulations on your reunion. Please know how proud we are of everything you have accomplished, and we hope you take this time to celebrate with your classmates. I look forward to hopefully seeing many of you in person soon. In the meantime, stay healthy and safe, and my very best wishes to each and every one of you.